Hey there, Yurii here, and welcome to the Community ROI podcast. Here, senior community experts tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about how a community impacts business growth. By listening to these conversations, you'll get actionable steps on how to connect community goals with business goals to skyrocket business growth while still bringing extreme value to community members. And my guest is Shannon Emery, an experienced B2B SaaS professional with a decade of hands-on experience in the tech space, who has a strong business sense and analytical mindset and loves building projects from the ground up, nurturing strong cross-functional relationships, and creating business cases that not only align with organizational goals, but also resonate with stakeholders on a personal human level. That's exactly how community builders do this shit. So, welcome, Shannon.
Thank you, Yurii. I was like, man, I sound really good right there. So yeah,
That's
thank you
that's
for having me. Yeah, that was
that's a real
awesome.
guru here. So, and I'm here to learn
I,
from you firsthand. So let's do it.
yeah,
Tell me,
yeah, that was
what
awesome.
is what is your definition of a community goal?
Oh, I had to sit with this one for a hot second. So to me, and it sounds like I'm gonna read it off here, but it is because I'm reading it off. I had to think about this, right? Because we talk about community, we talk about the business, but a community goal isn't always something that aligns directly to your business. So in my head, a community goal is an initiative that fulfills a need to bring value or add something to the member experience, whether it be connection, knowledge, events, memes, encouragement, motivation, whatever that looks like for your community, that's your goal, right? Because the community's goal should center around the member experience. How do I enhance that? How do I solve problems for them? And so, yeah, that's how I think of those community goals. What are we doing to make it jazzy? This is my lack of a better term.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
human part overall, like if you are
Yeah.
talking to humans like an AI chat GPT
Mhm.
style, most likely it won't work. So
Yeah.
definitely it's something to find out. And I'm curious, what is one goal of the community you are working with at the moment or worked before in your practice that inspires you the most?
Yeah. So I tend to go real deep into the current communities that I'm at. Right, I'm there. I'm there. So when I thought about it, the Kaplan community has was what interests me and kept me inside of the community sphere after my break. For those listening, I took a year off. That's a whole different story. We could have a whole podcast about that. But when I was approached for the Kaplan community, the mission, vision, and values behind it is what drew me to it because it's still corporate, it's still within that sphere of what I know. But our mission, vision, and values align with helping anybody who wants to change throughout their career trajectory, their career path. And so we're here for everybody. And we're relying on Kaplan and its branding and its legacy to do that, but in a way that anybody is welcome into our community, and we're going to build it that way, and it's being built that way. How are we doing this so anybody can find value? That's a wide net to cast, but we're all forever learners. We've watched job markets shift, we've watched people get laid off. We want to be able to help find things for people so that they can overcome those obstacles, right? And but that's the big mission. We want to help everybody at some point throughout their career, and at any point, regardless if they come to purchase for us or not, that we've been there for them, that we are continuing on that legacy, but just in an online fashion. So
And how
that's like my big goal right now is making that happen.
and how is this community goal connects? How does it align with business goals?
Yeah, I mean, of course, we're here to talk about business goals, right? And so I can't share too much about the ins and outs because, well, like I mentioned earlier, kind of want to have stick around at Kaplan. But our team is aligned to very specific goals coming down from leadership about what needs to happen, and that will help support Kaplan. Further than normal, right? Like usually communities don't have a strict business goal right off the case. Usually I've found that there's not one that's sitting there to be like, oh, we've aligned to this. However, Kaplan, the people who came in to help get this in place, put in those goals, and then Kaplan has refined them. Um, But I will say, like I said, it's one of the fastest business alignments I've seen with an organization for a community to ensure they understand the value and why it's there from the C-level down, right? So there's been really good movement of being able to show that. And I hope to be able to share more of it as it gets developed and we move forward. But yeah, it's one of the quickest I've seen. It's been interesting from that perspective.
How do you ensure you speak the same language with C-level?
Ooh, how is talking to C-level? So right now I have a really good, solid, well, he's our vice president of our little team, Paul Bradley, who is doing a really good job of learning how the C-levels are discussing things, how the business is aligned, because he's also newish to Kaplan. So as he's learning, he's taking on the job of being able to translate what they're asking for to us and what we're doing back up, right? So actually right now I'm calling him kind of our C-level translator, right? So that way we're learning from him as he's learning from us, right? And we're all working together on the team for strategies, roadmaps, and things like that. But then he's sharing what he's creating for them back to us, right? We have a 2-person team, and I've said since day one, I was like, I'd like to know how you're talking to them. What is the language that you're using? So that way, when Kendra, Solis, and I, who's my teammate, may encounter having to talk to C-levels or leaders within the organization, we're aligned on that language, right? What is the business goal? How do we talk about it? How do we translate like our fun community initiatives? I say fun, like everybody says the F word, right? Fun, my community initiatives back into that business goal, right? So that means that when we look at our planning, we also are looking at the business objective. Is it aligned? Can we create that correlation from those initiatives and projects to our business, right? Because we know it's important. We don't allow that to be the only thing that drives those plans and initiatives at our level, right? We do consider the human pieces and things like that. We just don't make everybody a number, but then we do take the time to translate that. And as we move forward, now that we have those goals moving into next year, everything gets aligned to those. So even though we're having fun, we're doing the thing, we're connecting members and stuff like that, we're getting a crash course in how to speak that language internally. So that way, if Paul wins the lottery, I know how to speak that language up to the C-levels to keep us going. If I win the lottery and Paul wins the lottery, then Kendra knows how to do that too. And I think that's important for C-levels and for community professionals to do regardless of your tenure, right? Get to know how those people are speaking. And if you have the opportunity for a C-level or CEO to learn how you speak and how you do your business, you share that. Like get them used to hearing it from both sides. Because we're all humans at the end of the day. Like the CEO shouldn't just be a nameless like figure behind a curtain that, you're like, oh, I'm too scared to talk to them. No. We're humans. You never know when you'll find that.
Yeah, it's a very important thing that people are usually forgetting about, and then oh my god, this CEO, I can talk to CEO. They're like from another planet, and I'm like, no, yeah, they're still the same humans. At the end of the day, they basically eat pretty much the same food that you are.
That's true. Yeah.
Drink the same water, but breathe the same. Yeah. So have you ever worked without a translator?
Oh, yes. Many times. And so I don't say that, and that's where the rub comes in with that statement, right? I've worked for some amazing leaders. I've worked within amazing organizations. Got to give props where props are due. But it depends on whether or not your leader understands what you're doing as a community person to be able to help you translate that. And sometimes you end up because of organizational shifts or changes with people who necessarily aren't against community. They're not like out there to take anybody down or anything. But it wasn't in their wheelhouse. It wasn't something that in their time that they thought they would be overseeing. So they take it on. Maybe they don't know how to talk the language. But because of the other things that they're doing, they don't have that focus. So I've been in that role where it fell to the team to be able to say, especially with organizational changes, to say, we are the ones who have to prove the value now, right? Now, that doesn't mean those folks were like completely gone from the picture, but they had a heck of a time translating or understanding what we were doing. So sometimes it became problematic, right? But I was always taught from early on in my career to stand up and say, we can explain it if you give us guidance on how to execute the deck or how you want us to do this. And so that's a piece of it too. And people always look at me like I'm crazy. I'm like, sometimes you have to teach your manager. You have to work a little further ahead to make sure your message is out there. But yeah, definitely been in those situations. Or I've had managers who understood what I do, but then they went off to go do other stuff because, well, I kind of know what I'm doing, right? So there wouldn't be a lot of intervention there. And I would still be responsible for translating that up to C-levels and stuff like that. So I don't know. I feel like I'm a rogue community manager. I'm like, no, I don't really like getting in my way. So I'll help you learn or I'll do it myself. So yeah.
Am I hearing it correctly that to really connect community goals with business goals, so community builders have to kind of teach C-level on like their language? I mean,
Yeah.
like all this empathy, helping people, and bringing the value and peace on the world and stuff. And C-level kind of have to like, hey, I totally get it, but here are our business goals. Ask me all the questions. I'm happy to help you understand the business goals so you can understand how to connect them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think it's part of that too, right? And I think C-levels who have communities in their organization, getting that understanding of how that language goes, right? So I also tend to not have a lot of like that, we people get what empathy does. They understand why connection's important and stuff like that. So I end up taking away a lot of that fluffy language when I'm talking to a C-level, right? They understand the power of connection. They wouldn't be C-level if they didn't understand networking and things like that, just from one perspective of community, right?
Yeah.
So it's actually, instead of saying, oh, well, we're here to connect people so that their lives are more full of joy and happiness, it says, you understand the value of networking. What we're doing is making sure our members can connect with each other, which then will lead to retention for the business because they're being taken care of us, right? So it's a both ways, right? Of understanding at a high level of how to talk about those touchy human feeling pieces, and then saying this is why that's important to the business. And it all comes back to your point, because we're humans. Right? I always tell people, like, if it wasn't for the humans, I wouldn't be here. So if it weren't for the humans, your business wouldn't exist, right? We don't sell to robots, we sell to humans. So I learned early on, and as most people know about me, I'm a rambler, right? So being able to cut that fluffy language and get to the core of that. And then I always tell people, as you get more comfortable with your C-level, feel free to share the human perspectives, the wins, the successes. They want to see that because it does give context to your story. But for C-levels, learn why is networking important, right? Like at their level. Why is putting up Meme Monday a thing in the community, right? Like those are things that community managers can learn how to kind of change how they're approaching that. Because I was that community manager. I was full of fluff and happiness, and I'm the perky one. And that's great, peer to peer, working with your members and stuff like that. But I found I didn't grab the same attention. You need to be fast, I need to be clear, I need to be concise. Because at the end of the day, like you said, they are humans, so they get it. They just need you to be fast about it, and be concise. Which of course I still work on every day because listen to me. I mean, that's a work in progress. But yeah, same for C-levels. Learn what we're talking about, right? And then community managers learn how to cut some of the things there around the fluffiness, and kind of dig into that, and then align it with those business goals. I think it's important to talk about. So yeah, it's kind of like meeting two people who are learning Duolingo together, right? And the little bird is community, and it's there to try to help everybody talk the same language.
What teams do you usually work and have worked with while building a community?
Um, oh, everybody's gonna laugh when I say this. Almost all of them at an organization. There's very rarely a team that shouldn't be involved in community, especially if it's external facing. I would say, things like HR, if it's an external facing community, aren't gonna sit in the community. But if the investment is coming down from C-level that you are to have this thing, you need to execute on community. You as a single person can't do that by themselves, and you don't know enough of your whole organization to execute a community. Working in corporate tech, I had to make sure I was aligned with product management, product marketing, customer success, customer support, all of those things. Now, you don't do all of that at once. Like somebody's going to hear me and be like, I have to talk to everybody all at once. No, you parse it out. You look at your current business goal. Where do you sit in the organization? Make sure you're aligning to your team or department's org, like the goals. And then you look who can help add value to that experience and also help you get to that goal, right? So in tech, it's often product management, roadmaps, feedback, updates, things like that. Support. You want to help with support deflection, right? That's a common case. And one day we'll talk about why it's not actually support deflection in my eyes, but not today. But support deflection, helping people get answers if it's you're putting knowledge in your community and things like that. Customer success, how are they leveraging it? So I say everybody should have a piece of the pie because we're building a city. And you can't build a city by yourself. You need people who know about city planning, how to plan out the grids, your product managers. You need people who can welcome folks into the city, like customer success folks. And so I use that metaphor a lot that I can't build the city by myself. Rome wasn't built in a day, and a community is not built in a day or without a bunch of people. So yeah, I always parse it out. Who do we need to start with? And then I'm bringing everybody else I can to the table. Nobody at a company shouldn't be part of community. That's my story. I'm sticking to it.
Let's jump a little deeper. So you already
Yeah.
told about support deflections, and you already told about like helping HR. So in what ways does a community specifically help reach other teams' goals?
Yeah. So just as like you learn how to talk to your C-levels, you need to understand the language and the business of each of the teams that you're working with. I'm going to pick on my product friends, because in my world, they were crucial to getting feedback, to getting questions answered about the product itself or with what's happening with it. Because at the time, if any point a product fails, those teams are the ones who are executing, like making sure things are getting fixed. They're going through triage and things like that. And so I had to learn, how do product managers think? How do they run their business? What can I bring that would be valuable to them instead of creating yet another channel for them? Right, to listen to. That's a huge problem. People will be like, I want to put feedback in the community, without realizing your product management team has 5 to 6 different channels they're listening to at any given day. Right. So if you don't know that as a community manager, you think you're doing something good until your members aren't being heard because that product manager has 5 to 6 channels they're listening to, and you never integrated your channel into their business. Right. Like it gets really awkward.
Yeah.
Right. When you're like, well, why aren't you taking their feedback? Because that wasn't prioritized on our roadmap this year to listen to the community. I've got these channels I listen to. And you'd be surprised. I was shocked when I learned how many ways these people get feedback. So it's sitting down with product teams to be like, how can we integrate this into your business? What is your, I say this, what is your time and resource that you have that you can help dedicate to this? This is how we're going to help you, and this is how it's going to help the member, right? I very rarely talk about you're helping me. You're helping our members, you're helping our customers, right? Yeah, you're helping me because I want to keep working here. But like at the same time too, you're actually helping our members, which is a much more impactful statement than help the community team. No. Help the people in the community who are like renewing, retaining, and all those good things. Help them. So I always frame it that way, but it's learning the language, and you end up learning like 10 to 15 different like business languages working across an organization. I think when I back was baby community manager, somebody's like, we're like mini CEOs that way. And it like cracks me up because to a certain extent, I find it to be true. I have to speak so many different languages, which also helps you align with your CEO. They have to speak many different languages too. But yeah, always get into how can we help you, or how can we solve a business problem? Is there something that team needs help with that the community can either quickly or slowly solve for them as time goes on, right? Do you want to combine all of those feedback channels into one place? And can it be the community? Right? Like, can we help you migrate all of those channels into one place, and be our partner on that kind of thing moving forward? So that's what I tell people: go dig into their business, understand their language, understand their business goals, right?
How do
To
you,
say, hey, what you got going on? I want to know.
it's interesting. I've never heard about it before. That's really product team might not listen to community because of they have so many other different channels.
Oh
But
yeah.
talking about really bringing value to other teams as a community team or as a community builder or as a community itself. So how do you ensure that you are helping them and not adding more to their plates?
Yep, exactly. So that's a piece of it, right? So when I'm working through discovery, which I'm doing with a lot of teams here at Kaplan, actually, it's listening, it's asking business questions. What does your roadmap look like for the year? What is something that your teams are doing that's causing a pain point? Is it a communication channel, right? Or is it something like we're wanting we hear a lot from customer facing teams. They want to hear from each other. They want to hear from each other. They don't like, they want to hear from us, but they want to know what other organizations are doing, right? And so as you start to hear what are the pain points of working through discovery, so I like a list of questions. Take me through your objectives. What is your busy time of year? Are there people on your team who are willing to talk with me about their day to day? Right? Because those things, as you observe and listen to them, start to bring up what could be solved by the community or the team. Also, alignment with their goals. Like, I love when I'm like, okay, well, if we add this, we would like to see some movement on your metrics or your team's metrics. Let's figure out what that correlation is. Um, that's where you're solving the problem, not adding more, right? Community can seem like, oh, I have to go add more posts, or I have to go create more content, or I have to answer all of these questions. When if we're doing these things right, or solving problems for a team, they're more apt to come and say, okay, you help me with that. Yes, let's answer all 85 questions in the community. Let's do this. Whatever the thing that we need them to do becomes easier because I'm giving them their time back. So here in my current one, I call us facilitators versus managing, right? We're here to help you facilitate that. So that way we can move on to our next thing, but we can also make sure that you're not spending a lot of time in the muck. We're making sure the process is easy and stuff like that. So that's another piece. Whatever you're asking them to do, please simplify it. Like, unless you really have the time and resources to train everybody to be a community person right then, you got to simplify what you're asking them to do. I've seen people ask for videos. People don't know how to shoot a video. Like, I've seen people, oh, you could just do this. In our world, it's just do this. In their world, you just ask them to climb a mountain. So simplify what you're asking for and then align it to what you're trying to solve for them. So that way you start to see improvements through change management and kind of changing it. And then you're going to prove that thing is actually working, right? Metrics, looking at whatever initiative it might be to get that correlating data. So yeah, I always say, go learn what they're doing and then see how you can help, not add, but you're going to help solve something for them. I come through a lot of talking, which I'm good at. So, yeah.
It's something that I'm always talking about, that instead of just coming up with just more initiatives, oh, we can do this thing for increasing sales, we can do this thing for marketing, and I need you to do this, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Like, really go ask, like, what can I do for you to make
Yeah.
your life easier and to achieve your business goals? And first of all, you will understand what the hell are business goals of other
Mm-hmm.
teams, and like in general, like what is the business. I feel like that's exactly how community builders can learn about those
Yep.
business goals and then to understand how to connect. And we were talking a lot about how to help other teams, but I'm curious, how do they help you to achieve
Yeah.
community goals?
So I guess on the flip side, there is, you're not just solving any problem for that team. Right. So as you're doing your discovery work and you're listening to their pain points and their issues and aligning with their business goals, is you're going to have to be able to pick the thing that's also going to make an impact for your member. Right. So that's where because you're the expert. Well, I'm going to tell every community person out there, I don't care if you've been doing this for 1 day or 85 years, your organization is going to be like, well, you're the one with the title. Tell me what you want to do. Right. And so when I listen to those things, as far as like identifying pain points, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, we'll solve your email inbox problem. Right. That's not what I'm talking about here. Like I said, is more general is the networking. I want to hear from other people what they're doing, right? You're like, okay, cool. How are you doing that right now? Right? Like, how are you connecting them with each other? What if we're able to scale that in the community by bringing them into like networking events once a month? So it's your job as a community manager to hear those pain points and translate it to your member experience, right? To say, okay, I can help you solve that problem with the community and it's going to enhance my members experience. And so they're
Mhm.
helping you, they're getting something out of it. And then the fun part is because they've done that and they see that you're trying to be a valuable partner to them while enhancing the member experience, then they start to want to do the other things, doing regular posting, answering questions. I mean, moderation is always a thing we talk about with any community, but it becomes easier to get those answers, right? It gets a little easier to like say, hey, can you do this blog series for me? And they're like, yeah, right, because you're showing your worth to them while also showing that it wasn't about Shannon. Right. It was about my members, and we solved a business problem and enhanced the member experience at the same time. It could take some time to do that. Um, but I have seen where community can be perceived as you're just adding on more for me, right? But those things that we need them to do later on, the more human centric things become easier if I have a way in. But it's your job, community folks, to look at those problems and say, what will enhance the member experience? Period. And sometimes they don't. Like you find that some teams just don't have anything that fits, right? And that's okay too, because then you have your traditional community management stuff that they can do, posting, engaging, answering feedback, whatever that may be. But I really like to have that there. But that's your job to say, okay, that's cool. We're gonna do that in the community then, and kind of, I don't know. People don't like this saying anymore. Kill two birds with one stone. Right.
Yeah.
Sorry for those out there. I gotta come up with a better little
Eat
phrase there.
eat two muffins with one mouse or something.
Ooh. Oh man, that sounds like a good
I
time.
would love to do. I would love to do that. Like I can
Mm,
imagine. Like, oh my god, it's so tasty. Okay, so
two muffins.
uh,
Yeah. Anyway, we could go down that rabbit hole.
I would love doing that. So I'm back to helping other teams, and they're helping you. So not even about that. Okay, let's move. I was so much distracted by muffins. So yeah, I'm just one thing that I can only think about is muffins. But yeah, how do you bring visibility to the overall community impact on business internally?
Oh, internally? Um, Yeah, you have to talk about yourself a lot. And by yourself, I mean your team, your community, like what you're doing, the business impact. And people always laugh at me when I say things like that because I'm like, no, but seriously, like in an organization, community is not usually the loudest voice at the table. So you actually have to insert yourself, right? So you're building, I tell people all the time, part of the value of what we do is building internal community, right? So we are the networkers of an organization. We have to work cross-functionally. We don't have a choice. So with that comes instead of, because I've been forgotten, right? People can easily forget the community is there. So it's your job or your team or you and your manager. I'm going to put some onus on managers too, because this is helpful for them to know, is to create roadshows, right? To make sure leadership knows on a minimum quarterly basis what the community is doing, right? If they're not asking for a business review, that you have monthly updates for your stakeholders, right? So they always constantly see you. So it's not just seeing you and executing on initiatives, but it's also realigning that message. What is this community for? Why are we here? Here's how your impact is going. And my favorite thing to do is rewards and recognition internally as well to ensure that people keep you top of mind. So, for example, I've had where we can put on a slide the people who killed it with us the previous month, right? Their initiative, working with this team for the C levels, it related to these numbers, right? For this group, they did this, and this is how it related to those numbers. And we actually just kicked that off here too. I think I could share that without anybody getting too mad, where we're highlighting those folks, but we're aligning to their business impact. right? For
Yeah.
those people. For them, we go, we're like, yeah, right? We're like, you did it, right? And you get that more of excited feeling. Their managers will know about it. But that's something I tell people all the time. Reward and recognize those that are helping you, because that's part of community internally. And they become your word of mouth friends, right? Like, oh yeah, I worked with them, it's great, right? Like, and then it becomes easier to do those types of things. But you are building community internally. I don't think a lot of people think about it that way. Um,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
yeah, you are. I don't know how else to explain it. You end up not that you're managing like an internal community, you're just building one. Like,
Yeah,
so it comes with that.
you are connecting people, definitely. And once community builder, always community builder. So
Oh
that's
yeah.
how it works. And
Yeah.
community is not always a bright side. There is also a dark side. So how do you talk about the challenges you face?
Yeah. So as I've gotten older,
Okay, that's the main
yeah,
point. Okay, let's
yeah,
think about it.
yeah. As I've gotten older, so I've got like a weird experience working in corporations, right? This was never like my preferred path. So I did spend a lot of time as a younger person, um, always trying to make things better than they were, right? Like trying to paint the brightest picture possible with the fluffy clouds and the rainbows and the sunshine and puppies. And I love all of that. By the way, if anybody's listening, like, oh, what happened to Shannon? Still love it. But working in a corporation, working within business, you just have to be transparent. You don't have to be mean. You don't have to be condescending. You don't have to be rude. But you can just get to the point, right? And be like, this failed because of X, Y, and Z, or no, we can't do that. Here's the reason why. So I always tell people, be transparent and be upfront, right? And your stomach's gonna hurt. You're not gonna feel good, like, because I always get a little tummy ache before I have to tell like a team something, or, and that's just part of anxiety and my own trauma. So, like, but I find that when I'm clear and then I follow up with the reason, people are understanding, even if they're not thrilled, right? Just like we do in like communities, you want to tell them yes or no and the reason why, right? That can't happen. Sorry, we can't do that right now. Here's why. Or that's not possible, right? At this time, it's still uncomfortable, but you got to get any community person needs to be comfortable with that, because you're going to get talked to, especially from your C levels down, that way, right? They don't spend time, like, unless it's one-to-one and it's something personal, they don't spend a lot of time trying to, go around and make it fluffy. They're going to get to the point, right? This is, if you hear it all the time in, quarterly town halls and stuff, they get to the point. There's always good highlights. There's always stuff to talk about that's good. But at the end of the day, I've learned clear is kind. I think Brene Brown said that. I don't know the context of that, but I see it everywhere. And as I've gotten older, it just resonates. Like, and that it can be difficult. I don't tell people that. Like, I'm not somebody who's like, yes, I love to tell people bad news. But something my grandmother said, she's like, if you say it now, she's like, say it now so you're not thinking about it 5 months from now, right? Say it now so you're not worrying about it, and to get that done with. And that was a big lesson for me. I could put things off, put things off, but then I would just end up feeling crappy about it. Let's get it done now. Let's work towards another solution. And that's a piece of that too. If there's another solution, try to find it.
Yeah.
Right. And it might be, or you don't have to do it again. Ooh. Yeah, like, oh, so you don't have to do it again.
No way.
That's
Is it
okay.
even possible? But yeah. And how do you deliver really difficult news?
Ooh, so I have a poll for that right now. I'm just kidding.
That's how it works. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I just put somebody between me and everybody else. I'm just kidding. Same kind of concept, right? But now if it's difficult news as to like something that is going to have an impact, you really should think about how you're going to deliver that news. Especially even, and it's so funny because people are like, people in corporations don't have souls, and like they're only out to get your money and they're gonna gouge you out of everything, which is so funny because like I've worked with some of the most humanist people that you could find in these organizations. And that's what I tell people. Remember, they're humans, right? They're going to take the bad news personally, even if doesn't matter how you deliver it. So you have to think about that. You have to be able to separate the human from the bad news, because ultimately in community, we're often trying, and I like to call it failing a lot. but that doesn't mean it was a failure on the part of like a person or them as a person. It was
Yeah.
something that didn't go well with a process, or maybe we thought this would resonate and it didn't. Right. So I always tell people, let's talk about what happened in this situation and not bring up putting, unless, and sometimes you have to have side conversations.
Yeah.
Maybe this person didn't deliver, but one, never do that in a group of people, right? That's not polite. Well, actually, it's not polite. It's just not right. Right. And then also that group of people probably put some feelings into this, right? So how are we going to think about that? And then how do you talk about it in a way that kind of excludes putting like, oh, you're a bad person. We didn't execute this because you were just wrong. Right? Like those kinds of I hate those conversations. And then once again, how are we going to move forward? What's the decision here? And have people help you make that decision, right? In my expertise, I think we should try again. How do we feel about that? Let's work through that together. Now, if you are working with somebody who's not delivering for you, you can have more blunt conversations, right? Like you can have those one to one and be like, hey, what's going on? Right? What can I help you with? Is there something here? I have a three strikes rule though. If I keep working with you, especially if you're not like reporting to me, eventually I need to go to somebody who can help me figure out what's going on with you. But usually I've never it's very rare do I hit 3 times that I have to go talk to your manager. I don't want to do that either. Like, I don't want to CC your manager on something. Like, that's
I'm
weird. I'm
gonna
a
tell your
community person.
parents. I'm gonna tell your parents.
Right?
Yeah.
Please don't make me, right? Like, I hate that. And that gives me a tummy ache too, right? You're like, man, but I really need that from them, right? To keep moving. And
Yeah.
so, how do you have this conversation? But I tell people, like, don't forget the human in the really difficult news, right? When you're talking to C levels, you can be cut and dry, you can get to the point. But when you're working with your stakeholders, think about them for a second and help them remove themselves from what was happening. Because I've been in those conversations where it made make you feel like you're a bad person or like it was something that you personally just failed at doing and it's so disheartening, right? And then you look at that person and you're like, well, you made me feel that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to work with you anymore. So not positive, but realistic and kind.
Got it.
Yeah. And less
Well,
rambly for those listening. Yeah.
what is one small step to take right away for someone struggling with identifying their community ROI?
Ooh. So I'm going to need you to go to your manager and leadership of your current department or organization. Unless you're sitting by yourself as a department or an organization, your immediate alignment should be within your team, within your department, within your organ, however your people talk about your space. Because I know there's different people call them pods, all sorts of fun stuff. So wherever your team is and wherever they sit, or if it's just you, you need to get real intimate right now with what's happening for your business and the organization. What are your goals that this part of the organization needs to help execute on? You can then start making friends within your own team, right? Helping them solve issues, things like that. And then how does that ladder up, right, to the big business goals? That's the easiest way to start understanding ROI, right? Because immediately the person or team or manager who has the community under them is also going to have to answer the same question. Great. So start working together. Be like, okay, if it wasn't laid out for you, you're brand new, or it's changing again, lockstep, right? And so that's something I do with Paul is like, Paul, tell us, right? Like what's going on? What's happening right here? So then we can start
Tell
working
us.
across, right? And people are like, well, you don't need to know that. I'm like, yeah, you do. Like I don't know how else to say it. And I told people it's like I'm not being nosy because trust me, if I could save the brain space for like more Jeopardy facts, I would. But I need to understand the business. And so that
Yeah.
space is there. I was like, yeah, trust me, I'd rather read a book and fill that area of my brain with that, but I'm going to hold all the business cases up there instead. And we're going to keep going. But yeah, I would tell people immediately align to your current organization, your department, understand those goals and understand how they're laddering up so you can start to identify if you're in tech, is it retention and renewals that your department looks at? Are you sitting in a support department or it has an arm of the support department? Are you looking at deflection and rechanneling or refocusing channels and stuff like that? Are you sitting in product? Tell me if you are, because that's always fascinating. Are you helping them clean up their feedback channels? Are you making sure that beta programs are running? What or working with those people to get those things executed? So really dig into your space immediately, right? If you don't know what the ROI is, and then you'll start to see in this organization, we're focused on retention and renewal. So we're going to start to look for data and initiatives that align to that in the community, because you definitely want those people in your space. They're should be your first line of defense, quote unquote, is the people around you, your immediate teams.
Shannon, I really wish to have the sky is the limit, but time is the limit. So the final question, name 2 people I should reach out to talk about community ROI.
Absolutely. So Leah Knowles is one of my favorite people, and also one of those managers who could translate back and forth for her team. And she puts a lot of heart and a lot of effort into that to ensure that her team is supported at all times within the organization. So she'd be great from that kind of in between, but being able to talk both languages. And then somebody I've known for a while on the LinkedIns and the Googles and all that good stuff of Katie Reiser, who is now doing operations at a bit of a higher level at her organization, but includes community. Right. So she is getting more exposure to like all of the leadership and stuff like that. And we've had some good back and forths about like how does business and community work? But they, I think, would be great to talk to and kind of in that middle. So I know they're not the C levels and they're not just down at the community level, but they're kind of in between.
Translators.
Yeah.
Translators. That's exactly.
Translators. Yes. Yes. So those would be my 2 friends to talk to about that kind of stuff.
And what is the best way to connect with you?
Oh, ever since they killed Twitter, makes me sad. LinkedIn. I'm out there, and so Shannon, I think .m.emery out there. But you can find me. I look like my picture. And so
really?
If you find me
no
there,
way.
I do.
Okay, okay.
It's not an old picture. Actually, I need to update it. I look too happy there. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, come find me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat about things. And I do have a blog that I'm going to start picking back up here. So Salama says, what about community? And it's out there. So you'll see it on my LinkedIn and things like that. So come find me. I love to chat about all things community or just to have a regular friend chat too. Can't be mad at those.
I totally get it. I always love talking to you, Shannon, every time. And thank you so much for this extremely valuable conversation and sharing your amazing experience so openly.
Thank you, Yurii, for having me and for doing what you always do, my friend. I think we'd be lost without you. But great.
Thank you very
so
much. Yeah. And see you in the community world. And thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions about how the community can help you reach and overcome your business goals faster, let's connect on LinkedIn and talk about it. That's it. We're done. See you in the next episode.